Today I have with me Australian distance runner Jess Stenson, formerly Trengove, and you've steadily climbed the international ranks over the last 7 years since your debut in the marathon, competing in 2 Olympics and 2 Com Games amongst a number of other international level races. The highlight, no doubt for most Aussies, would have been the Com Games in Oz, bronze medal in the marathon. Jess also devotes a number of hours to promoting awareness and funds to a number of charities, but also practices as a physio and is part owner of Rundies Undies. So thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I think a lot of young athletes would be quite interested in knowing what you eat and a bit about your thoughts on nutrition and sporting performance, obviously with your background. But tonight I think it's also really important that we raise a little bit of awareness of this growing rate of disordered type eating patterns and eating disorders that are starting to occur in our sport, which I have noticed a steady rise both in clinical practice but also in the training tracks and that sort of thing, which I'm sure you're also aware of. Is this something that you've ever battled with personally as well, or do you know of anyone?
Yeah, look, I think it's certainly a very important topic and something that we talk about a fair bit just as runners, and we're in a sport where it is a hot topic. And I think growing up in Naracoorte in the southeast of South Australia, I didn't really think about it too much. I've always been very health conscious and I've always aimed to eat what I thought was a healthy diet at the time, which even throughout my 30 years I've sort of been through the waves and nutrition trends of what I thought was a healthy diet. At one point it was low fat and you naturally opted for the high sugar foods and whatnot, but I think it really became obvious to me to some extent when I went to boarding school. I noticed that people had different eating patterns, but I didn't really have too much of an emotional connection to it. When I got into distance running, and particularly when I was on my first Australian team, Open Australian team, at the World University Cross Country Champs in 2010, and then later that year the World Half Marathon Championships, that's when I started to notice people's behaviours quite a lot, and hearing things about people restricting their intake, and I started to get an idea that that's what I might have needed to do too to perform better and to improve as an athlete. So in late 2010 and early 2011, that's where I'd say I had some real challenges with it, just battling with what I'd grown up believing and then what I'd sort of heard, and there was a bit of a confusion, I guess, and I started trying to cut back, and I actually had a really challenging 4 months of running where my training went backwards, my races went backwards. I really didn't achieve what I hoped, and I learnt a lot from that experience. Unfortunately, haven't had too many troubles since, but I still do snap into that mindset sometimes of what more can I do? Do I need to lose weight? And I think to some extent I do have an optimal race weight, and sometimes it involves cutting back a little, but I don't think I need to drop right down to the lower weights that I once believed I might need to be my best.
Yeah, good. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it is a struggle that a lot of people seem to deal with at some point in their career, but it's really good that at least you've had the foresight and I guess the background to not fall.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I've had people say, oh, you run marathons, like you don't look like a marathon runner, or oh, you've got a really strong build for a marathon runner, and those little things sometimes can start to push you back into your old ways of thinking, and then you've just got to remember, no, food is fuel. The most important thing is to be healthy, to be able to achieve my training to the best of my ability. And working with Olivia Warnes in South Australia, she's the sassy sports dietitian, she's really helped me to focus on that food as fuel principle and doing everything I can to be strong and have optimal energy at training, and then optimise recovery afterwards. And when you take that scientific mindset into it and remove the emotion, I seem to get my best results.
Yeah, good. Good. Yeah, I know Lydia O'Donnell as well has spoken about it recently, that those that are strong seem to struggle the most at times because of that, mindset that for some reason we all have to, have 0% body fat, which is totally unrealistic.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that there is anything we could do differently from both of us being health professionals, but for anyone watching this, perhaps even that is a health professional or a coach or a parent and a fellow athlete, is there something that we're doing wrong as far as what we say to athletes perhaps that is contributing to that picture?
I think definitely culture is a big part of it. So culture within a squad, so what the coach is saying, what your fellow athletes are saying, and if you can create a really positive culture and the coach is quick to stamp out any, of those comments that are made or whatever, and having health professionals accessible that the coach can refer athletes to if needed. And I think what your parents say also plays a big role. So even if parent education sort of focused on, and then I think good reading resources, but more so than reading, probably just having positive mentors. So I think growing up having some people that you can talk to about any issues or even non-issues in your career, and having them reinforce the things we were talking about before, health and being able to achieve your training is the key at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. Having a mentor, I think, is invaluable. Yeah, because it's very easy, I think, when you're so close to it, you're always going to not see everything clearly necessarily. So having external people, whether they're mentors or health professionals that can assist, is, I think, really important.
Yeah.
Now, have your, apart from obviously what we've just mentioned, have your eating behaviours or patterns changed, particularly over time, because of those different aspects you've mentioned with the low fat movement previously?
Yeah, look, they have evolved. I mean, I remember my first marathon, I went in just thinking, I guess I've got to eat lots of carbs the night before. That's about the extent of what I knew. And then going into the London Olympics in 2012, I still wasn't all that educated, and it was after that Olympics that I started working closely with Olivia at the Sports Institute, and learnt a lot. And so initially my approach to race nutrition was just a 2-day sort of carbohydrate load in the lead up to a marathon, and over the years we've refined that to reduce the fibre, because I was feeling really heavy lining up on race day from the carb load and sort of gut upset, so going to the lower fibre approach, and we've really just tweaked things. So that's, I guess, race nutrition. My everyday nutrition, I guess I've just refined it to really incorporate that. Again, generally lower fibre, but not necessarily always low fibre before training, but snack, within a short period of the key session, and then afterwards really emphasising the high quality sort of protein afterwards to kickstart recovery and carbs. So I guess really focusing my meals around key training sessions. So if anything, it's the timing that's changed, and not being afraid of the good fats, which back in those phases of I genuinely thought nuts and avocados and things were bad for you, and now I eat a lot of them. So
good to hear. Yeah, vitally important for a number of the vitamins as well, for the absorption of them. So yeah, good to hear. Now, how important, I guess you've touched on this really already, but the team around you, how important would you say they've been in maintaining your health and getting you through periods that I guess potentially were a bit tougher, or when you've been injured and that sort of thing, so that you haven't lost sight of?
Yeah, they've been integral. I mean, my parents, they've never put pressure on us in sport or in anything, and they've just genuinely wanted the best for us and our health. So when I've gone through some phases of I guess, confusion and changing things. You know, my dad's a vet and a soil scientist with a real passion for animal nutrition, so he's always sort of questioned things if I was going a little bit off track, and Dad's always been a big advocate of the good fats and eggs and all of those things and probiotics, and so he's been a great role model, and Mum as well, like just for a balanced healthy diet, and we didn't have any restrictions in our diet sort of growing up. It was just a balanced diet, so my family's had a really positive influence, and then we do have a really good culture in our running squad, and that's a huge credit to Adam Diddick, the coach.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You did touch on probiotics just then as well. Do you take any supplements per se, or...?
At times, sort of for major championships and whatnot, I've just taken the non-refrigeratable Swiss branded probiotics, because I think they're sort of approved with ASADA and whatnot, but otherwise I just try to have a diet that's high in probiotics, so that the yogurt, and I do have kombucha fairly regularly, and yeah,
brilliant.
I'd love to have more kefir and some of those other fermented things, but yeah, at this stage, it's just those ones.
Yeah, nice. That's definitely a good start though.
Yeah.
Is gut health, so you've mentioned probiotics more so specifically, is gut health something that you've always had to be, I guess, mindful of, given, you know, we were talking earlier about many runners having issues with gut tolerance and particularly those long runs. Is it something that you're, I guess, specifically trying to support, or just enjoying those types of foods and being a health practitioner as well, mindful that you want to create just general good health?
Yeah. So I guess throughout high school I had issues with sort of cramping and bloating and whatnot, so started to try and work out what I could do to help with that, and Dad at that time always encouraged probiotics, and I, you know, trialled different, restricting gluten-free and lactose and whatnot, but at the end of the day I think it is more of a stress-induced thing, that when I was, you know, studying for exams and whatnot, it triggered it. So I started to also really notice supporting gut health with probiotics and whatnot, and less colds and, you know, just general issues with health. So making that link between immunity and probiotics, I think it just had me sold. So I really do everything I can to support a strong immune system, because obviously that means less time away from training and feeling better overall and better energy levels. I also, throughout those years of having a lot of cramping and bloating and upset guts, my iron levels became really chronically low, and since having I guess less issues with my gut, I've been able to maintain good iron levels. So there were enough sort of examples there to show me that there's a huge link.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, that's so good that you've managed to get to the bottom of that. No pun intended.
Yeah.
I guess as well, with, you know, the amount of travel you've done, has there been any insights from those trips that have perhaps changed the way you've eaten, or, you know, even the village atmosphere is quite different obviously to a normal day? Yeah, probably sadly not in a positive way, seeing other people's patterns, particularly when I was sort of new to making teams and very highly influenced. I probably observed a lot and saw what other people were doing and thought that that would be what I needed to do as well, rather than just focusing on what I needed. So in more recent years I don't take as much notice. I know that what I do works for me, but I think, yeah, in my earlier years I probably just got a bit distracted by what I was observing elsewhere. So I think everyone just needs to recognise that their needs are individual, and the needs of a distance runner versus someone else are also very different. So yeah. But even that, the different, you know, genetics and other factors that come into play for even a distance runner, where everyone's quite different in that, you know, for your job outside of running as well, you've got a quite an active career, whereas some people might be desk bound or even more active, and there's so many factors that come into play.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A little bit more back to basics. Is there a staple dish that you like to cook at home?
There are quite a few. On a weekly basis, we'd have like a salmon dish, which I love, and my brother Jack, that's his sort of pre-game meal, is salmon and sweet potato, and he makes this amazing kale, avocado, walnut, sometimes halloumi salad that goes with it. So when we all sort of get together, that's a bit of a favourite dish. And then I also love homemade rice paper rolls, because you can just put whatever you feel like in it, whether it be chicken, sometimes make like an omelette that we include in it, and the rice noodles and carrot and avocado. So Dylan and I love doing those DIY rolls as well.
That's delicious. Is Dylan much of a cook?
He's nailed the spaghetti bolognese. If we want that, that's his dish, and he does the odd sort of fried rice too. But I really do love cooking, so I do most of the main meals.
Awesome. It does happen, yeah. Nice. You talked a little bit about this, but pre-race, is there any for you personally, I guess, rituals that you've got, food or otherwise, that you sort of have to do or have to do?
Well, I mean, Liv and I, so what have I done, 12 marathons now. We've got that carb load down to a very specific plan. So probably for my last 9 marathons, I've literally had exactly what I'm eating on Thursday night, Friday and Saturday and Sunday morning, down to like 1 medium banana, 2 tablespoons of honey on a piece of sourdough toast or whatever. So I just sort of go through the motions before a race, and usually the night before I think it's, you know, rice with maybe a bit of soy sauce, and if I want a little bit of chicken or something, but I'm trying to reduce how much I fill myself up with the protein. It really is getting the carbs in. And before the race on the morning of, I'll go for just, it sounds silly, I really have to polarize it. It's very different to my normal diet, but I have rice bubbles and sourdough with white sourdough with honey on top. So just that low fiber, high energy. I don't eat rice bubbles usually.
What's your standard?
I have a pancake most mornings that's got like a banana, egg, cinnamon, a little bit of protein powder, different seeds and whatnot, and make a batter and then put yogurt and berries on top. So a bit more filling than rice bubbles.
But it's good to highlight that, because I think from a nutrition perspective as well, there's, you know, a big push for more of that holistic and whole foods approach, but in certain situations, unfortunately, we do need to consume some foods which I guess are not necessarily perfect for health, but perfect for that. Yeah, and gels are a classic example of that as well. I'd never suck down a gel just by choice, but in the marathon I rely on it. Absolutely, not surprising. I have noticed as well when a lot of athletes are injured, and you've had a number of injuries yourself, there seems to be, I guess, 2 sort of camps, and there's those that become really strict and they're careful because they're not often doing perhaps the same amount of load that they normally would. And then there's others that are, because they're not, I guess, exercising to the same extent, seen as a good excuse to eat a lot of crap. And, you know, see a lot of changes in weight during that time. Do you fall into one of those categories, or? When I'm injured and I'm cross-training, I find that I tend to burn more energy cross-training, because I've become, I guess over the years, fairly efficient with jogging, and so a lot of the training each day is going out for that recovery jog and whatnot. When you're cross-training, your body's not as efficient at it, so I need to maintain, I guess, the high caloric intake to keep up with the energy I'm burning when I'm cross-training. When I'm in a rest phase after a marathon, I usually do just treat myself to whatever for 2 weeks, switch off mentally, and then I can come back disciplined again. If I were to maintain that discipline, avoiding the foods that I wanted to eat but I know I shouldn't eat in those down weeks, I think I'd find it really hard to then kickstart the next cycle with, you know, good discipline. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important that we have that, you know, downtime from, same with anything, whether it's food or work or anything, you need that relaxed environment to at times. Yeah, and it's usually not that hard to turn back on again into your sort of performance mindset. Yeah, I bet. Definitely when you're so strict with your goal setting. Now, in one word, and don't think about this too much.
Okay.
Hopefully you haven't. What does food mean to you?
Fuel.
Yeah. That's, I think, going to be the during this whole thing. It's interesting though asking different types of people that question, because I think for a lot of athletes that's what naturally comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely like pleasure as well. Like I really do enjoy food. It's something I get excited about every day.
Yeah.
But I think part of that is because it gives you energy, and it's
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you were stranded on a tropical island, and this is never going to happen, but you were only allowed to eat 3 foods, what would they be?
If I'm needing healthier foods, like
Okay, let's pretend that you don't have to go and run a marathon.
okay,
whilst
it
you're
can
on
be
that island.
as well, I'm going to say mangoes, because I absolutely love mangoes, and I really do love salmon, like a fillet of salmon, particularly with like a maple glaze or with honey and dukkha. And then probably the third one, like a really good white choc berry muffin, like really fresh, straight out of the oven. Yeah, or right up there as well is those massive fresh like salted pretzels you get in Germany straight out of the oven. I love kind of hot bread as well.
I'm sure a bakery will be on that oven.
Yeah, I'm sure. And someone who can make muffins.
Well, to finish off, is there anything that you wish Jess as a junior athlete knew, or perhaps something that a piece of wisdom you could pass on to the younger athletes that are coming through now?
I guess I didn't really focus on just running until the age of 21, and if I were to talk to myself as a 13, 14-year-old, I'd say do what you did. Like I'm really happy that I played a lot of netball and basketball and a bit of volleyball, and sort of running was always there but not the main focus, because it's meant that I've been able to really throw myself into it later on. And that doesn't apply for some sports. You need to be practicing a specific skill from a very young age, and probably for sprinters it wouldn't necessarily be the case. But I'm really happy that I wasn't encouraged to quit my other sports and just focus on running as a young teen.
Yeah, nice. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.